Hey guys, I'm Jacob and you're watching the Prepper's Bunker Outdoors. I wanted to give you my initial impressions review on the all-new Svord Bushcrafter. Really cool knife, made of 15N20. These are made in New Zealand. I brought this to the Georgia Bushcraft Gathering. Quite excited about this knife. They shipped it to me right out of the gate. So I'm going to do this review a little bit differently than normal. We're going to show you some footage. I'm going to show you the specs. And then we're just going to flip this camera around so you don't have to look at my stupid face while I talk to you about this knife from tip to pommel. So we are going to start at the blade like we always do in initial impressions reviews. Now I want to define what initial impression review is. This knife has not gotten a lot of use. It's gotten a little bit of use, but I do these videos from the outset of getting a knife to give you an idea of what I think it will do. Now I have used this knife, as you know at this point, for some feather sticking, for catching some fires. I brought this knife to Georgia Bushcraft where it was very popular. And so your edge here, 15N20 is a steel that is rarely used, but is probably the toughest carbon steel available on the market that you can buy. And so we have a zero ground edge here. It is a zero ground Scandi grind with a bit of a convex. And I have found that the edge geometry works very nicely for bushcraft tasks so far, and I think it's going to continue to do so. The spine on this guy is very, very sharp. I mean, it throws just molten lava very easily, which I am very happy about. Moving back to the handle, we've got ash wood here, and we've got these big old Loveless bolts, I believe those are, very beefy. And the handle is very simple, but very comfortable. When I grab it, we have this a little bit of separation in the handle right here for your hand. Everybody who held it thought that it was comfortable and nice. Not a whole lot to say there. The sheath that it comes with, someone mentioned that it is a junk sheath. I would disagree. It's a very simple sheath. You get your simple leather, you get a ferro rod loop, and you get this larger loop for storing one of their diamond hones. This sheath is bulky. It's relatively heavy for the knife, but I don't think it's junk. I think that this is literally a sheath that would probably last you the rest of your life. So it's a sheath that I think is absolutely serviceable for a sheath that comes on a knife. If I was going to give this to one of my boys or an employee or someone in a training class, I would have no problems giving them this knife and sheath. And for the cost, I think it's good to go. Again, I think you could use this sheath most likely for the rest of your life and be all right with it. Now, if I loved this knife enough and used it regularly, if this was my main bushcraft go-to knife, I would invest in a nicer sheath, no doubt about it, because the sheath takes away one of the biggest strengths of this little knife, which is how lightweight and small it is. You have a Kephart spear point blade here, and the knife is just deceptively lightweight and tiny. So a smaller sheath could certainly make it much more carryable and continue to, it would exemplify this knife's strengths. So I'm really excited about this little blade. It's supposed to be available on the market right now. You can find it at the Svord website. I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below at the top. But I have not seen it available in stores in the US quite yet. But the expected MSRP on this guy is somewhere between $99 and $109. And between the steel that's used and the properties of the knife, I think that this might be one of the coolest budget bushcraft knives that are available out there. Comes raw finish, raw forge scale, sharp spine, good edge geometry. It's good to go. Now, what I want to end on here is Svord is kind of well known for their fit and finish. And what I mean by that is this is kind of a traditionally made knife. It is a handmade production knife. And so I have seen variation in edges on these guys, on Svord knives in general. This one, the plunge lines are nice. The blade is nicely centered. The edge is nicely centered. I've got no issues with this at all. I think it's absolutely fantastic. But yours might be a little bit different. It is hard to say. Regardless, when it comes to a very simple and effective tool, I think that the Svord is absolutely a fantastic option. Just a quick addition here. I have intended to change this channel so that I always use a micrometer to measure behind the edge thickness on all of my initial impressions reviews on knives. And I forgot to do that with the Svord Bushcrafter. The reason for that is this is a true zero ground knife. So there is no micro bevel, so there is no traditional behind the edge. So what I did here is I just winged it and used the micrometer and measured the thickness of the edge where I believe a micro bevel, at a height at which I believe a micro bevel typically would be. And we're just over 20 thou. So that's really good edge geometry. It's really nice. This knife performs really nicely. However, 20 thou or just over 20 thou with this arbitrary measurement does not directly equate to 20 thou on a knife with a traditional micro bevel, because if your micro bevel is at 20 thou, you then go to a shallower angle for the primary grind, and you will have less resistance as you slice deeper past that shoulder, which measures at around 20 thou. With a zero ground knife, the edge simply continues all the way until you get to the full thickness of the stock. So that is to say, I wanted to do this and to throw this into this video because I want this to be a standard for this channel. But I also want you to understand that my measurement is never perfect, by the way. It's never going to be perfect. I think I can get within 1 to 2 thousandths of an inch. I think I can handle that, but it's never going to be exactly perfect. I'm not doing this in a lab. It's less perfect with a zero ground knife like this. But this is also a good opportunity to talk about edge thickness and explain to you some of the differences between a zero ground knife, which a Scandi grind should be a zero grind, and a more traditional knife. Now, if you have a Scandi ground knife like this and it has a micro bevel, it's not really a true Scandi ground knife anymore. It is now a low saber grind. So, for instance, when I first got the Tops MSK, they advertised everywhere with a true 0 degree Scandi grind. They moved away from that, but they never changed their marketing, or they didn't for a long time. And when I got mine as more of a knife noob, I kept reading about how to sharpen a Scandi ground blade and wondering why I wasn't getting my blade sharp. It's because it had a micro bevel. So at that point, it's not a true 0 ground Scandi edge. Again, it's just a low saber grind. So, sorry for cutting this in there, but maybe you learned something. So to wrap this up with my first impressions, again, we've got an affordable knife from New Zealand that has good edge geometry, good handle geometry, is incredibly light, and throws sparks like a demon. Overall, I think it's a fantastic package. If this knife were, say, made in Taiwan or something like that. Could it possibly be a little cheaper? Maybe, but you're literally getting a handmade knife from New Zealand. I don't, where else do you get a knife from New Zealand? And at just about $100, I think that this is a fantastic stocking stuffer. I think it's all around a fantastic package. Let me know what you think in the description box below. And when you're looking at bushcraft knives, what are some things that you look for? I look forward to hearing from you. I'll talk to you in the comment section below, and I hope that you have a blessed day.